Hi, everyone. This is Dave Markel, host of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast. Before we start in with this week's episode, I want to take a quick minute to mention and commemorate that this is the 2-year anniversary of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast. I launched the very first 5 episodes of SASS on November 4th, 2022. To every guest that's joined me on this show, to every audience member that has listened to an episode, and to those of you who've binged every episode, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of making Sexual Assault Survivor Stories a success and an avenue for healing and learning what it means to be trauma-informed. Happy anniversary to you all, and to this show. I'm looking forward to many more years of normalizing the conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast, dedicated to providing a safe space for victims and survivors to tell their rape or sexual assault experience as a step in their own personal healing journey or in helping others along on their journey. This platform is also devoted to explaining what it means to be trauma-informed and how important it is for each of us to know and understand the critical aspect of treating victims and survivors with a non-blaming attitude of belief, support, and empathy. I'm your host, Dave Markel, coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah. This episode is 110, which is part 3 of a 3-episode compilation of the life stories and experiences of my guest, John Carey. John is here because he fully agrees with the mission and goals of this podcast, and he reached out to me in order to help others through telling his story. John is helping to bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault, as well as to help normalize this type of conversation. Listen in as John describes the abuses, rape, and sexual assaults he endured while growing up, and I'll catch you on the other side. Here's John.
I spent more time alone in the woods and picking fruit and vegetables in the summer and drawing and painting in my bedroom, and the house was a mess. There was this one brother particularly who would randomly attack me. In the 6th grade, he was cutting classes. He was years ahead of me. He was in high school, and he was cutting classes, and he was home alone during the day because my mother started volunteering at the grade school at the library. And so she wasn't home during the day. So I'd come home for lunch with my sister, who I'd have to walk home for lunch and then walk back to school. So I'd walk home for lunch, and my brother wouldn't let me in the house, let my sister in. And then my sister came out and we would walk back to school. So I don't know what happened there, but that went on once in a while during the spring when I was in 6th grade. And this brother was really brutal, and he just randomly just beat me up. Nothing was ever done to it. There was a chicken coop on the back of our garage. I fixed it up to be like my little hangout room. And then for some reason, my mother decided that we needed to get rid of the garage because the roof had a hole in it, which made no sense at all. So they started with the chicken coop, and they took the chicken coop apart first. And then the rest of the garage, the city wouldn't haul away big pieces. So they had to saw each piece into 2-foot pieces and tie them with twine. They could only put 2 things out. And it took for months to get rid of the garage, left with this empty space in the backyard where the garage was, which made no sense at all. I still don't understand the whole concept. But when they had taken apart the garage and a lot of it was just sitting there, a couple of the neighbors asked me, "What's going on?" And I said, there was a hole in the roof, so we had to get rid of the garage. The neighbors were like, "What?" So a few of the neighbor kids wanted to see it, so I took them back there, and we're walking, and I stepped on a nail into my shoe and threw my foot and formed like a tent on the top of my foot, but didn't break the skin. And I just like, I was screaming in pain and limped to the house and opened the door and came in, and my mother's like, "What is it now?" And I couldn't even talk. I was in so much pain. There's a nail through my foot. She's like, "Shut up and sit down." And she grabbed my shoe and yanked it off, and she's like, "Go outside. I don't want to hear you crying." My friends were at the door looking at this, and I just went and shut the door, like shut them out, and I went down into the basement. And then I heard her say, "I said to go outside." And I'm like, crap, I'm still bleeding and stuff. So I went out, limped upstairs, and went out in the backyard and sat against a tree in pain. And then went back in when it was dinner time. And she's like, "You're going to the movies with your brothers." And I'm like, what? She never made me do anything with my brother for that one experience of that one boy beating the hell out of me in the park. So we walked a mile to the, or more, to the movie theater. I'm limping the whole way. I'm not giving any pain pills. The whole time we're watching this movie, my foot's throbbing. My brothers after the movie just like take off and I'm limping home, my foot's swollen. It was just a crazy household. I entered seventh grade and I hated the sports stuff. I couldn't play sports. I hated wrestling. I couldn't wrestle. I was in too much pain if anybody tried to do anything. There was a physical ed class. I liked the workout class, but I didn't want to play soccer. I didn't want to play wrestling. They had basketball and wrestling and sometimes baseball. But I was really bad at sports anyway, and I didn't want anybody bumping into me, and I was just afraid of anything. But I liked the workout class where we did these military drills. And then my brothers had paper routes that got handed from one brother to the next brother to the next brother. And then one day my mother tells me, you're waking up early tomorrow. She wakes me up early, way before sunrise, and I have to walk about a mile to these apartment buildings where my brother delivered newspapers. And he doesn't talk to me the whole way because he never talked to me anyway. And it was very awkward. And I delivered the newspapers with him, and he showed me, he had the collection book with him and showed me which apartments get newspapers. And then I had to go with him collecting one time on a Saturday evening, knocking on doors, collecting. The thing about newspaper industry is that it was built on the backs of child labor. They went alone and delivered newspapers, and it was the perfect setup for child predators. Over the years, there were many newspaper carriers, mostly boys, usually poor, who were abused, raped, some were killed, and some vanished. The newspaper industry used its influence also to get the federal government to make it federal law that newspaper carriers were not covered by minimum wage laws or child labor laws. When you think of the newspaper industry, it was literally built on the backs of child labor. Mostly young boys waking up early, going and delivering newspapers and collecting money and going into every neighborhood. And I liked it because I was also making a little bit of money and I was able to buy clothes for the first time. Like I bought shoes and I bought pants and I bought shirts and I was like self-sufficient, not having to ask my parents for anything. And I was feeling good for the first time. My grades were improving because I learned how to read and I was listening to the radio news and following news stories. Anyway, I was collecting money on a Wednesday. It was springtime. I was a few weeks away from my 14th birthday. I was in one of the apartment buildings knocking on a door, and I heard noise behind me. There was an open door of the recreation room that people in the building could rent to have parties or whatever. And I had never seen inside that room. And there were these 3 college-age boys who left. Apparently, they were being shown the room to see if they wanted to rent it or something, or maybe they were looking into renting an apartment there and being shown the recreation room as something they could do. And they left, and then I kind of tilted in and I looked in the room, just not really putting my head in, but there was a man in there who was the new manager of the apartment complex. He was like 50 years old, tall, strong-looking man. But he asked me, would you like to see the room? I'm like, no, I was just wondering if and he's like, no, come in. Let me show you. Come over here. I want to show you something. And I looked in and there was a pool table and there was really nothing else. There were some chairs or there was a bar with stools. And he's like, no, this side over here on the pool table. Let me show you this. And I'm like hesitant. I'm holding my collection book. I'm 13. This man's telling me to come look, whatever it is he's going to show me. And I look and there's nothing on the side of the pool table. He's like, no, it's underneath. You got to look underneath. So I look underneath. He grabs a hold of my hair and I fell down to my knees and he's trying to, he undid his pants and he's trying to put himself on my face. I'm trying to get away from it. And my left cheekbone kept hitting that corner of the pool table. And he's getting angry, like I wouldn't do what he wanted. And he picked me up and he put me on the pool table. And ripped my pants down, tore my underwear, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm all panicking. I'm holding onto my collection book like it matters. All the change from my pants falls on the floor. And then he got up and straddled me and he kneeled on my arms and it hurt so bad. I didn't know what the hell was going on and he had his pants down. I didn't know anything about this stuff, but he started doing what he was doing. And then all this stuff got on I didn't understand what got on my face. And then he's like slowly slapping my face back and forth and telling me, stupid boy, you stupid, stupid boy. I'm like out of it, just not knowing what the hell is going on. And then he turned me over, but then he really didn't do much. And then he's like, you could get dressed now. And he steps away and he's pulling his pants up and tucking his shirt in. And I don't know what the hell just happened. And I don't know what's on my face. And I don't know why someone would do that, and don't understand any of it. And I'm trying to pull my pants up, but my underwear is torn. And I get down off the table and I just gave up on my underwear. I just pulled my pants up and I start collecting change off of the floor and trying to like shove it in my pockets. And I'm all panicky. And he said, "That's enough." I'm like, "I need my money. I need my money." He opens the door and he says, "You need to leave." I thought I could get out the window, and I get tangled in like trying to undo the blind or the curtains or drapes or whatever. And he marches over and he grabs me, he drags me across the floor and shoves me out in the hallway. And I just start running. And I went to the back parking lot because I thought he was chasing after me. So I was in the back parking lot and realized there's nobody around. And then I took this other way out of the apartment complex and I didn't know what to do. And I'm walking. So I took a different route home. I went to this one street and up to the railroad tracks and took the railroad tracks to the park at the end of my street, the woods. And I get to this meadow and I just fall to my knees and on my hands and I'm staring at the grass and there's like bugs and I'm just like watching the bugs in the grass and I'm holding the collection book in my hand. I'm like, glad I didn't lose the collection book. And then I heard these voices, teenagers walking on the trail next to like at the top of the hill by the railroad tracks. And I heard their go like, "What's the matter with him?" One of the boys said, "Are you on something?" One of the girls like, "Oh, just leave him alone. Let's go, let's go." And they walked away. And then I eventually got up and walked through the woods and got to the big field by the baseball diamonds. And there were people on the far diamond playing baseball. And I laid down in the grass because I don't know, I didn't want anybody to see me. And I waited there flat on the ground until the baseball team left. And it was getting dark and I walked and hopped through like backyard fences to get to my backyard. And then I went in the basement and changed my clothes and got rid of my underwear and put my underwear in the garbage and hid it in the garbage. Like I was afraid somebody would find it. And I went up, I got some food and then I waited in the back room. And then I went upstairs to my bedroom the next day to wake up and deliver newspapers. So at his door, I wrinkled up his newspaper and then I went back and I peed all over it. And then I delivered the rest of the newspapers. And then on collection day, I didn't go to his door. I kept skipping. And then he would start showing up in different parts of the apartment complex. Like one day I walked into this one building and he was standing upstairs just like looking at me, like blocking me from being able to do my job. And I told this boy at school who I was getting to know, and I said, "This guy on my paper route, he keeps bothering me." And I think I gave him the impression that there was some like guy in his 20s who was trying to steal my money. I think that's the impression that this boy got. And he's like, "Well, we should tell this other boy who is friends with this tall, strong boy that someone's bothering me on my paper route, because that guy also has a paper route and he'll collect for you." And I'm like, "He will?" And so we met and they agreed to collect money for me. I met them at the building on my bike, this crappy bike I had, and they were on their bikes. And that boy went like in front of the building and went into the building, and the guy came out and stole my friend's bike. And we didn't know what to do. So he walked home, but I had to keep doing my paper route, and I was messing up because I kept having to avoid this guy. And I was skipping on collections, and the guy who came by our house every Thursday, the route manager who never spoke to me, told my mother that there wasn't enough money to cover the newspapers in the collection box. And there was an agreement like he could enter our house and go to the collection box that was kept in a cabinet in the dining room and get the money that I owed every week. And then whatever was left was my money. But I started not collecting enough money because this guy was interfering with me. And then one day I was collecting and I walked around the corner of this building and that guy was there and he tried to reach me. And his fingertips touched my arm as I ran away. And then I never went back and I just abandoned my paper route. Nobody asked why. And within weeks, I was getting high and stoned. I was like hanging out with my hair grew. I just turned into like this. It was sudden. I started swearing, which was completely awkward because you don't even know how to swear. When you first swear, my hair grew out. I was hanging out with the kids who were getting stoned and drunk and I didn't know what to do. And I would randomly make out with some drunk girl. My whole existence changed. It's so strange that my parents never asked. Not that strange because they never paid attention to me anyway. But there was this one boy who was in our neighborhood and he was a good kid and he was only there for a short while. And one day he told me that I was his best friend. He said the other kids are also immature. And I thought that was a compliment. Nobody ever told me that I was his best friend. And I didn't really think I knew him that well. But then I was like, oh, I have a friend. But he was very involved with his family and stuff. And then one day he got hit by a car and he died. And that was a second friend of mine who got hit by a car and died. But I didn't go to the funeral or anything. Nobody ever spoke to me. I didn't know what to do. The house was just gross. It was filthy. The summer of ninth grade, it got infested with fleas. There were fleas everywhere. I slept outside a lot. There were so many fleas in the house and nobody was doing anything. And everybody just seemed like out of it and drunk and high. My mother, like, how do we stop all these fleas? And she said, well, there's flea powder. I'm like, okay, I guess nobody's doing anything. I'm like, could you get more? It was so strange. Like I had to take charge. She brought more flea powder. I put newspapers down all over the house and I poured flea powder everywhere. And I left for like a couple days because it was disgusting. And I was eating fruits and stuff from my garden and from the trees in the park. And I came back in a couple of days and nobody even cleaned up the newspapers. And I gathered them all up and threw them away. And then the flea thing was over. That's an example of how screwed up the family was. And that same summer, when I was in ninth grade, I was in the dining room one day and I was reading the newspaper and my mother said something to me. And then my father's like, why don't you call him by his name? She's like, I did call him by his name. He's like, I thought his name was John. She's like, no, his name's Daniel. And I'm like, listening to this conversation. He's like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I had the birth certificate. It says Daniel John because I didn't want him to be named John Daniel because Jack is a nickname for John. And then his nickname would be Jack Daniels. And I hate alcohol. I walked away. I'm like, this is too strange. He didn't know my name. He didn't know. My father didn't know my name. I'm 14 years old. Very awkward. Here's something that I started noticing, and this was a problem because I started noticing, like I said, my mother would look at boys a certain way. And when I was young, she would bend over sometimes in front of them. And she would do it to me when I was in the living room alone, reading the newspaper. And she'd come in and she'd feel the need to pick something off the floor in front of me and bend over. And I would just get up and walk out. She gave me the creeps. There was this one boy in the neighborhood I knew she looked at a lot with that look she gave. And I knew she was doing things with him. And I knew that my brother, who was a year older than me, knew. It was just obvious. And I saw the look on my brother's face. It kind of built up over the years. And there was like no way I could deny it anymore. Like she was doing things with this boy. I knew my one brother knew, probably others did. I don't know the details, but I saw her in the kitchen and I'm like, why do you go see him? You need to stop. And she didn't even look at me. She diverted her eyes and she was just making food. And I saw that she was pissed off, livid. She didn't say anything back to me, like, what's she going to say? But now she knew that I clearly knew. Other people knew. It was obvious. But she was already this weird woman who had exposed herself to boys anyway. And even that boy, when I was in sixth grade, noticed it when she was looking at him. And he told me that she looks at him inappropriately. But she started being really brazen about staring at me. She would put down the newspaper or magazine even that she would read, and she would look at my crotch as I was walking through the room and smirk. She just gave me the creeps. In 11th grade, nothing was good. One of my brothers had left in the summer, and I didn't know he was gone. I noticed that I had a sleeping bag, and it was gone. I didn't know where it went because I used to use it as a blanket. And then I asked my mother, my sleeping bag's gone. And she said, well, maybe your brother took it with him. And I'm like, where did he go? And he had left. He traveled the country and never came back. He ended up living far away. In December of 11th grade, on the last day of school before Christmas, I walked home from school and I was really tired. And I went up to my bedroom to take a nap. My mother said something to me when I was downstairs before I went upstairs. I don't know what she said. I didn't pay attention. And she left with my sister. And then I went up to take a nap and then the phone was ringing and I heard the phone ringing but I was half asleep. And then I heard my brothers come upstairs and they kicked my door down. I'm like, what? I started turning around, but my oldest brother punched me in the back really hard and then picked me up and threw me on the dresser and then picked me up and shoved my face against the window, which was really cold, and threatening me, saying, "Where's mom?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Where's mom?" And the glass is like making noise, like my face is going to burst through there. And he reached beneath onto my crotch and grabbed my crotch really hard. And he was squeezing me really hard with my face against the window, going, "Where's mom? I'm going to push your face through this window." And then he stomped on my face and then they left. I was really screwed up for days. And I stayed in my bedroom. At night, I would go down to get food. Christmas, I stayed in my bedroom all day, and because my face was swollen up, my nose was, I had black eyes, and my back hurt really, really super badly. He actually came back that night and started kicking me around also. I looked at a map, I found a map, and I just wanted to leave, and I looked at how far California was. I wanted to see palm trees and I wanted to see the ocean. I'd never seen palm trees or the ocean, and I always heard about California. One day after like 4 days, I woke up really early and I took a small suitcase and I walked to the freeway and I hitchhiked to California. And I got there to California in 2 days. I was at the beach and I saw the ocean, and I was like, I'm not going to live in Ohio. And I ended up like hanging out in California and meeting people, and everybody was really friendly. For the first time, I had conversations with adults while on these long, long car rides. And I felt safe for the first time, and everybody was really nice, and people helped me and they let me take showers in their house or whatever on my way, and they bought me food. And I think they thought I was older than I was. I was 16. Maybe they thought I was 19. I have no idea. But I always wondered, aren't they going to say something about my black eyes? My nose had a scab on it. My nose was broken. There was that brother who left, and he was in California. I had taken down his address from this phone book my mother kept. And I was with this guy, picked me up. He was from Brooklyn, Brian from Brooklyn, in a Volkswagen van. And he's been driving all over the country. And he was like, if I could find an apartment, I'll stay in LA. And I'm like, well, my brother had an apartment and it was really cheap. He's like, your brother, he lives here. And I'm like, yeah. We went and knocked on my brother's door. In his apartment was this boy who grew up in our neighborhood, who had been molesting my Down syndrome sister. I caught him a few times when I was in 9th and 10th grades, and he would always threaten me if I said anything, he would kill me. He ended up joining the Marines. When I knocked on my brother's door, that guy opened the door. He's like, what is he doing here? So my brother came to the door and he goes, what? He didn't even say hi or anything. He said, what? I'm like, oh, I was just wondering where that apartment was that you rented that was really inexpensive. He's like, I don't know, go to downtown LA. There's apartment buildings down there. We walked away, and Brian, the guy, 19-year-old who drove the Volkswagen van I was with, he's like, that was your brother? Are you serious? That's your brother? You show up your brother's apartment and he doesn't even invite you in? Man, that's crazy. Does your whole family talk to you like that? I'm like, yeah. I ended up hitchhiking back to Ohio and went into the house at night and went to bed. And just came downstairs and everybody was just looking at me kind of strange. I think they were amazed that I did what I did. My mother would write these letters to my brother and leave them on the table all the time. And I would see her letters. And one of her letters, she said that I had traveled to LA in an RV, which was completely, she would make stuff up all the time. She was a compulsive liar. And that my father decided never to talk to me again. And that brain was really violent. My brother one day tried to strangle me with an extension cord, and I had to wrestle that off of my neck. And my mother was watching, and she said, now you got him. She was just so deranged. Like a month later, he was beating the hell out of me and slamming my face into the living room floor. Half of my face on my left side swelled up and my eyes swelled shut. And I went to school like that the next day. And students were like, what happened to you? Did they do this again? Because sometimes I would show up with bruises on my face. And it was really bad. And a few of the students gathered around me, like 5 of them, and they're like, you need to talk to the counselor. They can't be doing this to you. You need to go talk to the counselor. And I'm like, they're like, no, you need to go see her. Her office is down the hall and it's this one room. And so I went down there. I went into her office and she was in her office. There was a glass window and she was in there with another student, but she was on the phone, and I sat down on this sofa thing. The other boy left, and then the counselor waved me into the room, and I went in and I sat there, and she was talking on the phone for like an hour about what color her drapes were going to be and what wallpaper and what color she was going to paint her room, because her and her husband just moved into a new place. And you're like, oh, this sofa is going to look really cute. And I'm sitting there. She never even looked at me. And then she got a notepad and she wrote something on it and she handed it to me and waved me out of the room. And I left and I went walking. I just left the school and I went walking. It was a really cold day and it felt good on my face. And I walked until late at night in the cold. And then I went back to that house. I graduated drunk, high, and on LSD. I worked at factories and saved money. And then I left and I never returned. There's a whole lot more to the story, but that's probably good enough. I was completely unprepared for anything. I tried to be friends with that brother. I ended up being his roommate because he was going to lose his apartment. And that turned into a really bad situation. For example, there was another roommate there. He's now in prison for molesting a girl and a boy. He went back to Ohio and he molested a teenager. And he's in prison for a really long time in Ohio right now. The second roommate was a really bad person, me and my brother and this other roommate. And that roommate is now dead because he got shot by a cop after stabbing a guy to death in a store in Ohio. He moved back to Ohio. But my life was a complete mess and I'm not prepared at all. It's not surprising because my childhood was such a disaster. Everything about it was not right. My parents weren't right. My family was not right. Everything was just bad. One thing I forgot to mention, between 11th and 12th grades, I got really good at art. I was always like drawing and stuff. And in 11th grade in art class, I made this painting when I was in 11th grade. And I got a prep scholarship to the Cleveland Institute of Art for the summer, which was prep for going there full time after high school. And I started going in the summer between 11th and 12th grades. I really loved art and everybody thought I was going to be an artist. I always got A's in art and G's and everything else. There was this one day where one of the teachers, he did nothing wrong. I just didn't like men at all. I was afraid of people, most people, men and women. But during lunch, all the other students went to go to a restaurant. It was like these other like sort of posh kids. And then there was me and another poor kid. But I didn't have any money at all. I had enough money to take the train to I think it was 3 times a week. But the teacher came in to talk to me during lunch just to hang out with me while I was working on this art project. And I didn't know what to say to him. I was super shy. And he's like trying to pick up a conversation like, oh, you're really good at this, and complimenting me and how are you going to do that, and watching me. And I was really uncomfortable and it was really awkward. And I never went back because I just got so freaked out by him that I thought something was bad was going to happen, but he did nothing wrong. But I dropped out of the Cleveland Institute of Art. When I moved to California, I was not prepared at all for life. And I had to get my life together. And I did a lot of things. I ended up going to college. I got in the newspapers and magazines and all this other stuff and started helping people write books. I did that a lot. And I worked for news weeklies and I've worked on movies and TV shows a lot as a photo double and a stand-in for all these major stars. Recently, Brad Pitt, I was his photo double in a movie. They didn't use my face. I've done a lot of stuff and I wrote these books, Dream Another Dream. I help people write screenplays and I help them polish screenplays. And I wrote a book that's been used as a textbook in film schools. It's called Screenwriting Tribe, the first 2 editions of it. Now I came up with a new version called the Screenplay Repair Manual. That just came out 6 weeks ago. That's basically the third edition of my screenwriting book. And I run a screenwriting workshop called Screenwriting Tribe. There's over 1,000 members. So I had to dream my own dream, change my life around and do something with myself and rise above what I came out of and deal with my memories. And maybe I turned them into something good by writing Dream Another Dream and the book Dream Your World. That's about probably all I need to say about my childhood, but it was even worse. There's stuff I didn't even want to talk about because I get too pissed off and upset and angry and I have nightmares. But I think I'm fine. Do you have any questions?
It's a very interesting comment. I think I'm fine.
Tonight. I mean, I think I'm fine right now. I feel okay.
Okay.
Not posting.
Okay.
I call it posting PTSD, like having a PTSD episode. I don't think I'm posting. I don't feel bad. I feel calm. I feel like maybe I helped somebody. Maybe doing this will help people. Maybe they'll read my books and it'll help them.
I hope so.
I think I did a good thing right now and I feel good about it.
You asked if I had any questions. I've got, several million. And I say that with my tongue firmly implanted in my cheek. I wonder, first of all, how you cope and what you are doing to heal. And I know writing must be a huge part of that.
I think it's helpful. It was also good to write my books. It's not all my opinion, it's opinions from people from throughout history, quotations from
But
sorts
it
of.
says a lot about you and who you are because of how you put it together.
I'm an artist, so maybe that helps. I mean, I'm a creative person, so exploring thoughts is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps develop you if you have an open mind and including in conversations with people you're close with and exploring thoughts. I think, well, there's been many times. I don't want to go into my adult life, but um I mean there was one time when I had kidney surgery the first time and they said I died and I was only supposed to be in the hospital for several hours, but I ended up in the hospital for 4 days, 4 nights or something. But they said I died. And then the nurse who was coming into the room to prep my body for the hospital morgue saw my eyes move. So maybe this is the second incarnation of, I don't know, but who knows? I do a lot of stuff. I take care of myself. I am into nutrition. I follow a plant-based diet for the last 34 years. I run, I bike. I like going to yoga classes. I was really into that. I try to set boundaries. I stopped being around really toxic people because I realized that was a common trait. When you're messed up, you attract messed up people. Dream Your World goes into like vibrational energy patterns. We're all really just energy. We're vibrational energy patterns of different substances, somehow held together by some people might call it spirit or your soul or something. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out someday.
Which came first, Dream Another Dream or Dream Your World?
They're both at the same time. I wrote them basically both at the same time.
Simultaneously.
They're really thick. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't it like 400 pages?
I didn't look, but yeah,
I don't even know how big my book is. I get really good messages from people who've read it. And I've had really interesting conversations with people who've read it, but it does include quotations from people throughout history about life philosophy, motivational type things. When I was 19 and I had that apartment in Westwood, there was a guy who you would hang out there and he was my age or a little bit older. He was this obese, kind of really tall guy who lived in Venice in a crappy apartment and his life was a mess. But he used to come over and we would have these conversations. And then I lost contact with them because I lost contact with everybody from that part of my life on purpose because it turned dangerous. But years later, I was at this woman's house and her TV was on, and my friend Tony was on TV and he was talking about a book he wrote called Awaken the Giant Within. It was Anthony Robbins. He used to hang out in my apartment when I was 19, and now he's worth like $700 million.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Your life,
It's been bizarre.
It's mind boggling.
And I ended up being Peggy Lee's butler when I was 20. I mean, I just go on and on. But my adult life is a whole other 5 hour. I could have gone on for many more hours. I covered enough of the sickness of my family and the dysfunction and the horrible misfortunes. But I'm sure there's lots of people who would very much appreciate hearing the whole story. I think it might be surprising to a lot of people how many people could relate to my story because a lot of people do not talk about it and they don't want to talk about it and they don't think about it. And maybe it'd be helpful if they did hear about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be helpful if they heard everything. Yeah, everybody's probably had something bad happen to them. Don't get stuck in the train wreck. You need to collect yourself and focus on what's good about what you can create your life to be if nothing is good in the past. And I really don't think there's anything good about my childhood at all. There was nothing, there's no good memories. There's really no good memories from my whole childhood.
That's what's, I think, so amazing, how in the world you transformed your own brain and your own thought processes and your own abuse into this phenomenal, amazing, productive human being. And
Well, it's better than becoming a drug addict.
Right. How did that not happen?
I'm just trying to live. You got to do with what you have, take what you got, make lemonade, move along. I think I composted, I hope, all the garbage into something worthwhile, maybe.
Yeah, you have an amazing story. And I cannot thank you enough for being strong enough to tell your story, but also for choosing my podcast format and platform to tell your story.
I hope you can use it and that it gets out there and helps people and helps sell my books.
Yeah, I do too.
Go for it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you for having me on, and I just hope it's helpful.
I know it will be.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast, and concludes our 3-part series of John Carey telling about his physical abuses as well as the rapes and sexual assaults he endured while growing up. Thank you, John, for your remarkable strength, fortitude, and desire to help others by the telling of your story. It's an honor having you as part of the SASS family. And to you, my audience, please be sure to tune in next week for a new guest in our ongoing efforts to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. If you've just recently joined me here on the Sexual Assault Survivor Stories podcast, thank you for being here. I would greatly appreciate it if you would take just a quick second to give this show a rating and subscribe to SASS. Every new subscriber and positive rating helps promote this show to others, and in turn helps bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. So thank you for your support. It would also be extremely appreciated if you would go to the new Sexual Assault Survivor Stories page on Instagram and click that follow button. Being an Instagram follower of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories also helps further the mission and goals of SASS and provides for the opportunity for more people to have access to the site and to this show. Thank you in advance for following. Please remember to start by believing whenever you encounter a victim or survivor who's reaching out for support in telling their rape, sexual assault, or interpersonal violence experience, because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.